we have a startup, and the startup is called ReUp. And throughout the course of the presentation, I'll explain what it is. But let me explain that ReUp is a crowdfunding platform wherein individuals can come together, and it's social awareness. But in addition to that, it's an opportunity to put your money where your values are. Okay? ReUp is all about making change the way you earn. I was just looking at some articles, in preparation for, where I'm at. We were just recently in Los Angeles. We've been moving around the country having this conversation, or I have been having the conversation. And it's interesting, no matter where I go, it's the same situation. Our level of understanding about the business is consistent. And I'm one to consider something. When you consider like pathology, right? Pathology is a science. If some people are doing a certain thing a certain way, there's a reason for it. And when you begin to investigate a little closer, you find out that something isn't just wrong with people of African ancestry. There's something that has happened. And so we'll talk about that because that's key in what we've come together to do. So what happens is ReUp turns change into the way you earn. Like I said, we're the first crowdfunding platform that functions as both an awareness campaign and a social network. And we build a real audience. When I say that, a real audience of people who are passionate about what's going on. And what's going on is this, is that a legalization movement is taking place across the country, and you're being left out. Consider, you have individuals who can hang in the air for 3 minutes and dunk, shoot from the half court and never miss the shot. We can run, we can jump, we can kick, and we know that those individuals have, disposable income. But consistently, we're still left outside of this sector. So there's something interesting about that, and again, we'll talk about that. So this is the key part right here. 80% of all the cannabis that is grown in this country originates in California, all right? But it doesn't stay in California, all right? I want you to understand this. I'll take my time because I want to develop the opportunity for you. This is where I introduce myself, okay? When I met Tamara, and Tamara, I always blow her name, so excuse me, Tamara. When I met her, I was coming down from, even that's why she said, when I saw you had locks. But the reason why she thought I had locks is because I have a grow in Northern California. And everybody in Northern California, the majority of the people don't look like, us, this room. So therefore, the particular tools to maintain a brother's hair are not up there. So at that point, my hair had begun to lock up when she saw me. So I had been there for like 2.5, close to 3 months because it was harvest season at the particular time. So the reason why that's significant is this, that I'm telling you from first eyesight. I realized that although me and a white guy were in the same quote-unquote field, we really weren't. I was selling weed, and they were selling cannabis, all right? I was in the game, and they were in the business. And I'm looking at this, and the people I have to pay, that don't look like me to drive from Northern California to the Bay and sell, I can't do that. Because if I come down that hill with my hair starting to lock up, then it's a different outcome. And that's when I began to think, I said, I can't be, the thinking man's drug dealer, because that's not who I am. I'm a highly educated individual who I thought and felt this was a good business to be into. But as I continued to look at it, I realized again that I was in the game and they were in the business. Now let me tell you about this opportunity. This is where I want you all to really, really key in so you can see how investment works. All right? Investment does not work the way that you most likely have heard that it works. All right? And that would be conventional. Trust me when I tell you that everything that is presented in a conventional way, it does not work that way. I'll say it again. However, we're told to get into the housing and the real estate industry, when you get closer, it does not work that way for you. All right? It does not work that way. So, let me show you why this is significant. 14 million pounds leaves California every year. Every year. Only 20% stays there. Now, if you follow the arrows, those arrows are going to specific places. All right? Why is that important? Where did all that marijuana, 14 million pounds, where did that go? Who has it? How did it get there? Believe it or not, we have it. We, as people of color, are responsible for a large part of that 14 million pounds of marijuana that leaves. How do I know that? I know it firsthand, first off. I know it firsthand. But for you, as laypersons, I'm assuming, let me show you why that's key. The British nobleman Baron Rothschild made this statement at the Battle of Waterloo. You've heard, how many of you all heard before, buy when there's blood in the streets? Anybody heard that before? One person. That's not a complete statement. It's not a complete statement. Let me show you why that guy on there is significant. That's a rapper from Atlanta by the name of Rollo. Rollo would constantly make, insinuations on Instagram. You're familiar. And take pictures with pounds and pounds of weed. Well, he was captured twice, flying in private jets from, allegedly, from the West Coast to the East Coast. Why is this significant? It's significant because this is happening. There are finely tuned trade routes that are from California to all of these chocolate cities. And that's how marijuana is getting there. How do I know? Next slide. Because black people are arrested in New York, in various places around the country, more times than anyone else. If you know how to read and listen, what that simply means, if you're always arrested, if they come in here and arrest us all, and then when they check all our pockets, we end up having 10 pounds of weed in here. And then they go to the next place and they do the same thing. What does that tell you? That means that we have weed. Are you hearing it? I want y'all to really get this because this is what's taking place. Why is this significant and why is this an opportunity? Because the real quote says, buy when there's blood in the streets, even if the blood is your own. What does that mean to us? This is what it means. It's prohibition, y'all. It's prohibition. Whenever something's about to become legalized, you over-police the segment of the population that is the proletariat or the working class. And if these individuals were to become empowered, then you would capsize the system. If you recall the whole war on drugs, people call it, not effective, it was a failure. I disagree, it was highly effective. War is an art. It was highly effective. They were never concerned about the drugs in your system. They were concerned about the drug money in your pockets. Because if you had drug money in your pocket, all of us wasn't going to be on crack. All of us weren't going to be addicts. Somebody was going to use that money to move themselves, their neighborhood, their blocks, and a group of people out of the predicament. And this country, whether you believe it or not, economics 101 is capitalism, and capitalism is based on a certain amount of people that must be socially designated at the bottom. That is what this is about. And so, this is why when you look at the word, the first process of marginalizing a group of people is to separate them from the information that would empower them. The two biggest companies in this country, I recently sat in a meeting with them, and it was 7 ex-NBA players. The two biggest companies in this world are Acreage and Canopy. The two biggest cannabis companies in the world, they emerging. If you go look up now, Martha Stewart just did a deal with them, and they're going. You're familiar with it. They're going to transform her 53,000 recipes into CBD infused, and so on and so on and so on. They are buying license left and right. Everywhere there's a license, they're grabbing it up. You have to understand, even in the states of Colorado and Washington, 73% of all of the boards of directors and the owners of these type of industries are white. 81% male. We are not represented in this industry. We are not represented in this industry. Marginalized, to relegate to an unimportant or a powerless position. That's the definition of marginalized. So the cost to that is this. Simple math, y'all. 36 states, even I think just recently another state came online, Chicago, so it's 37. 37 states have made some form of a decision about cannabis. Now, how many states are in the United States? 50, right? So if 36 states, 37 now, have made a decision, there's only 13 states left. And if we still represent less than 1% ownership, isn't it safe to say that is the way that this thing is going to go? Because you would think at some point at the 25 state mark, somebody, Jerry or Fitzgerald or somebody would have made the statement, hey, wait a minute, we're leaving out the people hardest hit by the war on drugs. How many of you all know someone who's been arrested as concerning marijuana? How many of you know someone who went to prison concerning marijuana? All of our families have been affected by this. And at the same time you got people in prison, you have people on the cover of Forbes, Entrepreneur, Inc., and whatever being called ganjapreneurs, the smartest person, the princes of pot. That's what you're having, the king of cannabis. But here we are, we're in prison languishing about that. So the reason why we can't get into this business, one of the hurdles is this. In Atlanta, we have, in Georgia, we have a bill that was just introduced. I was part of the lobbying portion of this bill, pushing that there was inclusion for us. It's called HB 324. In the beginning, HB 324, House Bill 324, in the beginning there was going to be 60 dispensaries. 60 dispensaries. There was about 12 licenses for delivery, testing, and when you growing and cultivation and extraction. All of these labs were on the table. Then after it moved from the General Assembly, it went to the Senate, and then we couldn't go in and contest it or add commentary. The governor came in when they were in there discussing it and made a deal. And when that thing came out, there are no dispensaries. This is unprecedented. The only people who will be able to dispense cannabis in the state of Georgia are pharmacies. Now, how many of you all know how to get inside of Walgreens and CVS as investors? You see? That's what happened in Georgia. Pharmacies are the only ones allowed to dispense, and 2 colleges. That's it. That's it. So I want you to understand that this thing is a means of correcting state debt at your expense. And regardless of the legalization process, as a few slides back, I made it clear to you that the arrest of people of color has not slowed down. Why? Because this is what's taking place. Remember the diagram I showed you about 20% stays there and 80% comes out? There's a concept in business called the Walmart effect. You can probably get an idea of what that means by just thinking about what Walmart does. The Walmart effect is this. When Walmart plops down in a particular area, all the mom and pop businesses are done. Grocery stores, you name it, car washes, everything, it's a wrap. It's done. The watermelon man is finished. You know, I think the conch person will survive because I don't think Walmart is in that business yet. But I'm sure they'll figure it out, you know, depending on the demand. So what happens is that's what's happening to your finely tuned distribution systems. See, we have fallen victim to the racialized fiction that we are these drug dealers and so on and so on. So when they come into the neighborhood, what they're doing is they're gentrifying these networks and setting a dispensary there and arresting you and then selling what you were selling and going on. That's why it says that when there's blood in the streets, even when it's your own. That sounds like a cold adage. But what it's saying is that move beyond the emotions of it, move beyond the stigmas and the fears of it, and realize it. I have an older brother who, for real, because everybody probably looks at their older brother this way. My older brother was for real Michael Jordan before that was Michael Jordan. He could dunk any kind of way that he thought about. And later in life, he had a 1-inch scar on his brain. Now, my older brother always smoked weed. But when I began to figure this thing out, I gave him the oil, the concentrate. And he took some that would fit on the tip of your little finger. He would have these seizures. And it was hurtful, you know, to see him in this way because how I always saw him. From the day that he took that oil, he never had a seizure again. We were told that those seizures are going to kill him one day. The day that he took that oil, he's never had a seizure again. Now I wanted to show you all the magnitude. How many of us have an aunt or an uncle that's diabetic? How many of us have people in our families who are on 1 to 3 prescription drugs? Now imagine, and all around this country, you know who disproportionately are suffering from chronic illnesses, right? What happens when we began to play for the team that we own? And every product inside of that venue, we own it also. What happens when we began to sell concentrate to we that replaces this overpriced, you know, medicines and so on? Do you realize what would happen to the healthcare system? The pain medicine. How many of us know people who we've lost to cancer? We're feeling this. The stats are not just numbers, they're us. But this is an opportunity for us to get into a business that we actually will be our own customers to. All right? So there's another program that's going on in the country where they're promising that we would have access to license under an affirmative action licensing process. So many of us are signing up for it. I was a part of the process in Oakland as well as in LA. It's called social equity. Social equity has only produced in the last 7 to 10 years one license. One license. Now what does that mean? That means by the time, matter of fact, let me give an example. In Oakland, over 20 licenses were passed out through this social equity program. And not one of those licensees opened a dispensary or a grow. You know why? Because when it came time to do so, all of the properties, the warehouses and the places to open up, it was priced too high because the big money had already came in and knew that if they want a warehouse, it's $20,000 a month. Are you understanding what's happening? So we're kept out. That's a problem for us to be able to get in. But this is what we did. So like I said, I didn't want to be the thinking man's drug dealer, you know, and the Stringer Bell comparisons from The Wire had worn out on me. You know, although I relish the idea to be akin to, you know, Idris Elba for a moment there. But at a certain point, it became clear to me that we needed to figure something out. So I had been studying about how to get into an incubator program. So I began to write up ReUp. ReUp in its first incarnation at the time I met you, it was a roundup system, where if you spent your credit card, you could round up, and the money that you rounded up, you would invest. Well, then when I did the math, I'm pretty quick with math. When I did the math, it would take about 3 years for someone to have $500 to invest. And the game would already be gone at that point. So we began to revamp it. So I came up with a program where we would remix investing. And what we did was this. In 2012, love him or not, President Obama did something that was historic, but did not make the news with us. He passed what you call the Jobs Act. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's jumpstart our businesses. 79 years prior to that, if you were not a millionaire, an accredited investor, had a net worth of $1 million, or earned $250,000 a year, if you were married $300,000, you couldn't invest in a private company. Could not do it. It was only for the rich. People were investing in the Ubers, the Slacks, the Dropbox. They were investing those for pennies on the dollar. That's what they were doing. And at this time, when those things went public, they were cashing out with millions. But you couldn't do it simply because of that law. But in 2012, Obama passed the Jumpstart Our Business Act, which meant that unaccredited investors could invest just like accredited investors. All right? Did anybody know that? If you knew it, let me know. You knew that. Okay. You're cheating. That's no doubt. So what we would do is we decided we would remix investing. And in the remixing of investment, all of us have seen the commercials, or we have in our thoughts the imagination that you go into Merrill Lynch and then you make an investment in stock. Well, that's investment bankers or collaborative institutions that charge all types of rental fees or in-between fees. In the street, they call this the middleman. So we simply applied that school of intellect and we cut out the middleman. All right? And this is where we leverage what Obama gave us, and it's called Regulation A+, and it's Tier 2. And what that is, it's a DPO, Direct Public Offering. All right? Direct Public Offering. This way, an investment that is in the cannabis business, we would be able to bring that directly to a group of us and say, hey, there's a farm here. There's a license here that can't afford to stay in the business. Those licensed that are languishing in Oakland who don't have the money, but if we put our change together, this is what we could do. All right? Let me show you why that's significant. Cannabis is a $10 billion industry. I'll say that again. Cannabis is a $10 billion industry. It's proven. Statistics are the ones that we show up for and sign, that we consume cannabis at the same rate, if not more, than them, than other nationalities, right? Now, that doesn't take into account the underground also. I believe we consume more. But keep in mind, they say we are 13 to 14% of the population. Now, you imagine 13% of the population, sister, consuming this product on par with, what's the math, with 87% of the population. That's some serious consumption, right? But if you're a business person, that's a serious what? Opportunity. All right? Serious opportunity. And this second part is the key, and I'll say it so you don't have to read it. That we have what you call in business outsized influence. What that means, what we say is cool is cool. When I first started going up to what's called the Emerald Triangle, all right, I was the only face that looked like me going up there. All right, the only other brown face was an Asian. All right, everybody else was white. When I went up there, I saw, because we were making purchases. At that time, those white guys were referring to cannabis by its strain name. What does that mean? There was strawberry cough. There was cookies. There was Gorilla Glue. There was blueberry haze. Some of you all, you're trying not to shake your head, so you know. I don't think that you know anything about this, but that's okay. I'll say it for you. I know about it. They were referring to it by its genetics. And so let me show you who you are. At a certain point, when I would go back and come back with my money to buy again, I noticed the white guys stopped referring to it as that. They started saying, hey, I got that gas. I got loud. Now, what does that mean? Because I don't want to make sure, I want to make sure. Bro, you seem to be nodding with me. What does that mean?
It's real strong. And it's just generalized. So you wouldn't know what shrooms is.
And there's another thing. There it is. He said it's a target for us. Our influence on the whole industry was such that no one referred to it by genetics anymore. They referred to it by whatever it was that you called it. Now this is, listen when I tell you. Listen when I tell you. This is so far up. These white guys had dreadlocks and their beards down to their feet. I'm serious. These were what you would call hillbillies. These guys are no longer, I'm giving up the game now, and bro got me on TV, so I want y'all to hear this. These guys no longer refer to this by genetics. That's how much you were consuming this. You got to hear it. That's why if you're 8 times more likely to be arrested with marijuana, that means you got it. The people who don't have it, don't have it. So when you arrest them, it's a speeding ticket. It's just, switching lanes, improper lane change. But when they arrest you for the cracked headlight, this is what you got. All right? So I want you all to be clear, because this is what I came to understand from being in the game when they were in the business. My brother, if you don't mind, can I ask you your age? Are you okay with telling us that your age?
I'm 65.
You 65, okay? I want you all, let's go back in our heads for a minute. Anybody travel to the Midwest like Chicago, Detroit? Chicago and Detroit were renowned for what they call the running numbers, okay? Y'all with me? When we were running numbers, they later on did what? Turned into the state lottery. When we had gambling houses, they went and created Las Vegas and got gaming license. This has happened before in history. That's what's happening now. You're selling weed hand to hand, person to person, and now they're legalizing it and creating dispensaries. What you've been doing has always been grafted and consumed. Whenever there's a business that you haven't been able to get into, you created a privately held multi-billion-dollar industry. You don't believe it? Hip-hop. You created it. You created the language for it, the dances for it, how it was codified, and how it was disseminated. And now you don't own it. The blues, jazz. The first $1 million made on jazz was made from a white man. It's history. This has always happened. This is your capability. So what does this have to do with ReUp? Let me tell you what I consider them, and I'm biased, of course. Let me show you what's the genius of what we do. What we've put together, or what we're putting together, is we create what you call do-it-together IPOs. What does that mean? In the business world, there are many IPOs. We've coined the phrase in the do-it-yourself generation or do-it-together. Because our collective monies, when we aggregate our monies, they're more powerful. Now let's add back in those brothers and sisters who got 3-minute hang time, who can throw the ball, kick the ball, and so on and so on. And then we take our money also. So this is the magic. I want you all to refer to this diagram so you can see what we do. Under the regulation A+, you're allowed to raise $50 to $75 million. It's debatable at this point if it's 75. It's been proposed, but we know that the last agreement was that it was at 50 million. All right. So imagine all of us putting together our monies collectively. We create what's called a mini IPO. You take my 75 with his 75,000. This person's 100 with her 100,000, and then we raise this money in the form of an IPO, mini IPO, initial public offering. We take that and invest it on behalf of us into counter businesses. But this is our secret sauce. Where do we do this? We do it in densely populated, what I'm calling chocolate cities. Now, if you follow me, you'll see why I'm saying this is special. Because what happens then, when we come to Atlanta, when we come to Miami, when we go to Birmingham, Alabama, when we go to Detroit, when we go to Lansing, when we go to Flint, when we go to DC, when we go to Baltimore, you all seeing where I'm going with this? Boston, New York. When we go to these places that are densely populated with us, then we corner the market. See, we don't need every dispensary. We just need several of them in several places. We don't need all the cultivation. This is the $10 billion industry. But what are we going to do when we get in it? Think about it now. How many of you all, you see the rap videos and whatever, pen that the brothers are smoking from, that becomes the pen. A lot of these rappers, unfortunately, are signing their names away and not receiving equity because they're ill-advised to a lot of these cannabis companies. And they are selling these brands without them having ownership. That's what we're in the business of, converting individuals who are historically been consumers into being owners. So I want you all to understand what we're doing. I'll say it again. We aggregate our monies. Accredited investors, those of us who are millionaires, who are worth a net million, and then we also get the unaccredited, those who make less than $250. And we put our money in. And what happens then, we make a purchase for these licenses that are in this particular city, but the places we do it are strategic because we need it to be in a place where we are densely populated. And then we do what we call the Trader Joe system. If you know about Trader Joe's, let me tell you about it. Trader Joe's is private. Trader Joe's competes with Whole Foods. Everything in Trader Joe's belongs to who? Trader Joe's. It's private label. It's white label. So can you imagine the effect of we are only copying from the shops that we own? Do you know what happens when that happens? Y'all not giving me no energy, so I don't know if y'all are feeling me. If y'all, maybe y'all smoked a little bit before y'all came in. Say it again. You keep a circulation that they ain't never seen before. And the reason why I'm saying this is genius, of course I have a bias. But I'm saying that you're already doing it. Everybody in this room know right now you are 1 or 2 people removed from where you can go get some marijuana. But imagine if it was yours. Then imagine the concentrates that our aunts and our uncles, now we're making sure, because we're part owners, that they have this. Y'all understand what I'm saying? This is true power. And I have to say this to you all because, I'm a cultural anthropologist by study. My godmother is Marimba Ani, or Donna Richardson, and she's a renowned student, anthropologist of Dr. Henry Clark. The reason why that's significant is this. It's because if you understand who we are culturally, there's a thing happened in this prohibition where we were really made afraid of this. We were also made afraid of each other. I was doing a lecture in Detroit, and a brother raised his hand, midway, and so I respect that you all allowing me to continue in the presentation. So he said, listen, I don't invest my money with just anybody. And so, it was kind of like he drew first blood, like I don't invest my money with just anybody. So I was the just anybody. If proper English syntax is correct, I was the just anybody. So I asked him a question. I said, my man, let me ask you something. Please apprise us, since you needed to say that, make us all clear about your investment portfolio. And it turned out he didn't have an investment portfolio. He didn't have an investment. So it wasn't that he didn't invest with just anybody. He just didn't invest at all. And I'm saying that because that's what we do with us. If a person is doing a capital raise, then that means he broke, he ain't got no money. If a person has a pitch deck, that means that he just clever enough to put it all up on the screen so he can trick everybody out of money. First of all, I would have you know that the SEC is a highly regulated concept. It's federal. There is no sneaking past the SEC once you're registered, securities, offering security. It's not possible. Anybody, if you even watch TV, no one in this audience have I told to say this. So if you watch TV, you should know this. What is the conviction rate of the federal government? Does anybody know? It's 95%. So you'd be a fool, but that's sometimes people are fools. So that's part of the game too. But I want you all to understand is that what we need to do is push beyond our convictions and study so we can understand. Because I'm telling you, the first process to marginalize the people from their generational wealth is to make sure they don't have the tools or they have a built-in or innate fear of interacting with each other. The last time what we're talking about doing was done with Marcus Mosiah Garvey, if you recall the name. Marcus Garvey raised millions from poor people on less than $1 a day, pennies a day. And when they looked up and this guy had millions, ships and distribution businesses, fish businesses, stores and grocery stores throughout, Chicago, Detroit, New York, they realized, wait a second. And historically, that's when this law began to change. J. Edgar Hoover made his bones off the bringing down of the great Marcus Mosiah Garvey. So this is the last time this type of thing was done. And it's feared by the masses. So again, is everybody clear on how this works?
Yeah.
Okay? All right. Let me tell you something, and I don't assume what anybody knows, so I just like to say it. The biggest startups in the history of America have have this going for them. The concept is called network effects. Network effects. And let me explain what network effects are. Give me the name of a big startup that you all know. Airbnb, right? Uber. Let me explain what the network effect of Airbnb is. The network effect of Airbnb is when one side of a user, they are advantaged based upon another user getting something out of the trade. So when this sister has a house and wants to rent it, and this brother wants to rent it, then when you add to it, when everybody adds, so everyone now, there's a lot of houses to rent from. And there's a lot of people who want to rent it. So that's a network effect. How many network effects is it? 2. Renters and the people who will stay in it. All right? Some network effects, some people achieve 3. Some people achieve 4. And it is hands down, every time you achieve network effect in a startup, it is a blockbuster. Let me explain the network effect of what ReUp is doing. I just explained to you, our differentiator is how we diversify the face of ownership. Because in this room, this is how you get to function. You get to function as consumers, influencers, all right, investors, and owners. How many network effects is that?
4.
That's 4. There's nothing like that where, and then this is the beautiful thing of it. Each of those users are the same person. Y'all ain't hearing me, so I don't know if you're getting what I'm saying. This makes this an infinite multiplier. You are a consumer at some level, and you're an influencer. All right? And at the same time, you're an investor and you're an owner. Like I said, it's like the Green Bay Packers, right? They're owned by the fans, right? It's the only thing in the league. Imagine playing for the team you own, and every I'm a vegan, so every veggie dog that's in the place that gets sold, you get the money for it, all the apparel, And the real estate you own too. Are you seeing what I'm saying? You will own all of this. It's an infinite multiplier. Infinite multiplier. All right? So, as we bring it to a close, let me tell you what we're doing. Because I believe in transparency. I think that it's necessary because we don't have it to lose, and it's just real. All right? This is what we want, and this is why. And I want you to understand the significance of this. That smudge over there is not me trying to erase it. I think it's on the screen. So we're raising $1.3 million out of what you call a seed series. All right? The series that we are in is at this stage where we're traveling through the states and we're getting people, whether you are accredited or unaccredited, to make investments. And let me explain what we're doing with that. We're ramping up subscribers. When you go to the site we're making some changes to it, we're expanding it as we speak. We're ramping up subscribers. Why are we doing this? It's obvious. Uber needed users. We need people to say, hey, I'm with this, I'm interested in this, I'm in this. And we continue to educate us because there is, being honest with you, there's a serious learning curve just about investing. Then there's the learning curve just about, cannabis, who can own or whatever, those kind of things. It's the learning curve. So we build these subscribers up through a process. We optimize our ability to scale. In any business, you look for the business to be able to scale. What is scale? To grow. How will this business grow? The more, again, it's network effects. The more of us, believe it, don't be dismayed. I'm telling you, regardless, I'm talking to everyone. I don't care if it was 2 people in the room, I would still talk the same way. All right? My point is that the more subscribers, because believe it or not, more people signed up to come than came. And that's still okay. You see, because the more subscribers, it's better because that creates traction. All right? So we're building subscribers so that we can optimize for scale. Point 3. It is important that it's the Avon concept. Everywhere we are and everywhere you are, is that you go and have conversation with people. What happens when you, get 10 people who are listening to this? When you get 10 people, when you get 10 people, you get 10. Everybody's 10 people operate at different levels. It's important that we establish this conversation in the form of what's called thought leaders. I've been traveling around. I'm booked at different conferences around the country. And I'm not a fearful, I'm thin only because I'm vegan. It's not because I'm a lightweight guy, okay? But the thing is that I'm not afraid to have this conversation. What's happening is a real thing. We're being left out. We're being left out. Any of you all that made investments in real estate, you know when we got in it. We got in it when it was over, when it was ending. That's what we do. We talk about gentrification. Atlanta is not going to continue to be a black city. You can't gentrify an area of homeowners. You gentrify an area of renters. Believe it or not, these major places where we are in great population, we're renting. We're not owning those homes. Some of us are being bought out, but most of us are living in black cities of renters. This is why the trend of ownership has to happen. This gotta happen. And the beauty of this, y'all, is that it may just feel like it's a few of us. It's not. Just listen to the 2020 elections. Are you paying attention? The decriminalization, social justice, legalization of marijuana, these conversations are talked about at the highest level right now. What did I just say earlier? Quoting the Baron Rothschild, when there's blood in the streets, what do? Y'all were supposed to say, bye all together. We'll try it again later on. Right? Rough crowd. You buy. Point number 4, all of this is what takes us, these conversations we're on platforms to be where we are establishing ourselves as thought leaders. When this concept is blazing hot, where we hit the Breakfast Club, USA Today wants to do a national spread on us, this is what's happening now. We just wrote in an article in an Entrepreneur magazine. When these things continue to come out, what's going to happen is that this conversation will be blazing hot. At that point, when we reach this number, this rate, this particular portion, our goal with this 1.3 is to make this conversation hot. It's almost like running for president. You don't get to be heard unless you spend some money. When this conversation is blazing hot nationwide, that's when we'll start the process of a capital raise. Please take your time and go review. It's called Regulation A, Tier 2. It's a crowdfunding concept. What happens is, after being approved with the SEC, Securities Exchange Commission, after being approved with your what they call your white paper, your PPM, your private placement memorandum, what happens? You have 365 days to raise to your goal. All right? So we will take, we want to do it less than that. We need to do it less than that. We will raise this money up to the 50 million. And at that point, that's when we'll make those investments. But trust me, that ain't a lot of money, but we don't need what everyone else needs to be in this business. That's why I said, everywhere we are, if you put the puzzle together, a dispensary here, a grow here, right now you can, the game is missing a brand because it's illegal, it's federally illegal, right? You can't move, a product from here across state line, that's trafficking. But CBD you can. So what happens when we fill all our stores with brands that our rappers and celebrities and NBA players make hot, and we make hot for Big Mama and so on, and then for ourselves? What happens? Now we have a national brand that we do. It's FUBU all over, for us, by us. That's the potential. So the specifics of this money, marketing costs of a capital raise. That's where you simply pay a marketing company that you're engaged in, and that marketing company does a strong PR campaign to get you in newspapers, magazines, and so on, and get you out to these events and make sure the publicity takes place. National awareness campaign, which is what we're doing now. 10-city Chocolate City tour. I called it Chocolate City, by the way. And that simply just means everywhere where we are in dense populations. Geofencing. Anybody familiar with geofencing? It's a scary concept if it's not used for good. Anybody know? Geofencing is this. Anytime an event, you ever notice when you're looking at something on the internet, those shoes, like I'm a sneakerhead, right? So I'm addicted to buying sneakers. So when I buy sneakers or I'm prospecting the sneakers, everywhere I go on the internet, those sneakers follow me. You ever been on the internet and things follow you? That's geofencing. All right? It's tracking software. But geofencing is at another level. Literally, you can type in coordinates, this particular place, and everyone in here, we will find out what your background is, your ability to earn, your social status, your social media status, how many friends, how many people follow you, and then we take that information, and when you go back home and log into your personal internet, now we got everybody in that house. That's what geofencing is. And then, so instead of us throwing a net and hoping we catch everyone, we will use geofencing to find out who is most likely to invest. You see, we're not just throwing a dart out there and hoping we just hit the guy who likes to smoke. That's not what we're doing. We will go to chat rooms, we'll go to co-working spaces. Every time there's a conversation of significant people in the room, that's what geofencing does. Please understand that's a powerful tool when it comes to business. Business is a science, y'all. They're not lucking up to do Uber, lucking up on Airbnb. There's high technology involved in gathering it. You go to Macy's, you go to these department stores, do you realize that their business is not selling clothes? You know what they're selling? They're selling your information. Sir, ma'am, you mind if I have your name or number, would you like to get a credit card? That right there is worth much more than what you're going to buy. Having that information. That's what geofencing is. We would do that in the 10 cities, and we would gather through information funnels those individuals who fit the description of most likely to invest in this product. And we will keep ReUp's information in front of them. All right? Content development and placement, that just simply means that we would be dropping our own commercials throughout the internet that would move around to the people once we got their information from geofencing. All right? We would keep this content in front of these individuals. Same thing that YouTube does. If you do a search and start watching a certain thing, they will suggest to you what you want to watch. That's what we would be doing. Staffing budget, 1 full-time person and two part-time persons, up to the actual capital raise, $200,000. Legal structuring, $50,000. Before you file for SEC, what's mandatory is that there's an audit. We are of the thought that we are not going to play when it comes to the SEC. This is not a thing where we're just going to fly willy-nilly with just any lawyer that says, I'll do it. What we're dealing with is individuals who are seasoned and vetted when it comes to securities, i.e. security lawyers, okay, security attorneys. All right, then there's the filing. There's a filing process, and the form is called 1A, where you create what I call the white paper or your PPM, private placement memorandum. And you submit that, and the SEC takes approximately 180 days, and in that process, they give you back their comments. And if they say, hey, change this, change that, whatever they instruct you, you do until you're awarded, you're finally approved. Once we approve, that's when we start the capital raise. And the goal is to be blazing hot at that point where everybody's talking ReUp. All right? Digital strategy, the web page, analytics, Google Analytics, SEO, search engine optimization, data capture, 100,000. All of that comes to 1.34. That's the total. And so that's what we're dealing with ReUp. So I wanted you all to see this because, again, I'm telling you, I don't know what everyone's background is, but I'm an avid news watcher. Because there's a concept there's a thing that takes place when you watch the news. You should be listening for vibe more than you listen to the content. So when you're watching the news and you really begin to hear the contrast of information, that's supposed to cue you in as to what you should be doing. So I just pulled this from, I think this happened last 2 days ago, recall, right? Where there was a hearing on reparations. You've been hearing about this? Well, Senator Cory Booker, who's running for office, he made a statement about that. It's that time. It's that time to deal with this concept of the racial wealth gap. Well, the school of thought I come from, my father was a Garveyite. I come from the school where we fix our own issues as opposed to waiting for others to do it. And the significance of that is that we can become our own social equity program. We just need, and I don't mind saying it, y'all. I'm from Alabama. I'm a humble person. All right, I'm from a dirt road that's still a dirt road. So I'm saying that to say is that we need the help of us to get involved to make this thing happen. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm traveling, on my own dime to push those things so that we can understand and we can make this investment. People, we have a very strong following in Detroit. We're looking to be very, very strong in Chicago. Chicago just went recreational. Atlanta's the hometown, so we got a strong hold there. And it's a very affluent black population. I know that's the same across the board. We have people who can make things happen, and we just need to make those happen. And if you recall Mitch McConnell's response, he talked about that, I don't get it. I don't get it, I don't agree. And this is the type of conversation that the dichotomy that takes place as it relates to you. But like I said, the key thing that ReUp does, ReUp gets you in on the crop they won't share. They're not sharecropping this one right here. All right? That's not going to happen. But we figured out a way for us to get into this business and to earn. And all of us get a check as a result of that. We can repair our own situation. We can be our own reparations. We can be our own social equity. So with that, I appreciate you all. And like I say, we say, it's time to re-up. We can be our own correction, our own fix. And I can pause now for any questions. Any question, it's all good.
So it's like Acorn a little bit, right?
No.
It was started like that, though, right? You said you was rounding up.
Oh yeah, that's what we were going to do.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
But the time that it would take for each individual to raise the money to make a sizable investment, the investment would be totally gone by then. So we pulled that back. And then Acorn has the backing to each of those transactions. There's a fee, so you can imagine the amount of transactions, fee per transaction that would take place. It just wasn't a good business model for what we were doing.
so now let's get into how much? How much?
The answer is you.
How much you want for it? Okay.
The answer is you. The answer is you. The individuals the individuals who want to invest, it's your call. We have to decide because there's different paperwork if you're an accredited investor and you're an unaccredited investor. You understand? Because there's different ways to file your information as opposed to another person's information. That's how that works.
What is the return?
Let me explain that. Because this is what you call a blind raise, all right? And let me explain a blind raise. We're raising capital to make an investment. So what's available today may not be available in a month, all right? But we're projecting that we would give a 20% return. Anybody in the business, bro, from your turn, I think you understand, when you look at annuities, you know, you're not getting 20% unless you own the corner doing something, you know, that you probably shouldn't be doing. But of course, and it's not to say that those kind of returns are not out there, but the ETFs that are out there right now as it relates to cannabis stocks, you all know what they're returning. And you know how long it takes for you to get a return in that. But everybody's familiar at some level about the weed flip. You know, the people who invested in Uber, it's taking them the 5 years for them to get their return. That's not this particular business is a commodity. So the flip is much quicker than any other situation. So my answer to that is, bruh, we are slated to give 20%. We can't say that, and we're grown so I can say this word, I'm not a bullshitter. So my thing is this, there's so much to be gained from this opportunity, us trusting us, and then also us learning how to invest, and that's important. Because we can do this and do this again. That's why it's called an infinite multiplier. So the answer to that is our projections are that we're going to give 20% back. All right? But we'll know that after we hit the raise. So in other words, before any investment is made, and I think this would bring you comfort, before any investment is made, you would know. So you have the opportunity at that point to say, you know, I'll pass or whatever.
Have you guys ever raised money?
Yes, we to that number, I'll go back. To that number right now, we're $350,000 in. Detroit has pledges of at least 1.5, but I haven't gotten there yet to see what that is. But we've already raised $300 and something thousand. Yes, sir.
So is ReUp like an IPO? Is this an IPO?
Yes, it's a mini IPO.
All right. So what exchange is the stock ticker going to be?
It's not stock.
Oh, it's not stock.
No, sir. It's equity shares.
Equity shares in what?
Say again?
Equity shares in what?
Okay, let me go back because you weren't here for that.
Yeah, I'm catching the back end.
Nah, no problem. Yeah, in cannabis businesses. We're a DPO. IPO fits under DPOs, all right? All right, so a DPO is a direct public offering. We're not going through an investment bank or any other collaborative, fees that's involved in going through these middlemen. So we have the ability, if we all put our money together, to literally go and buy a farm, buy, an extraction lab, buy a dispensary. That's what this is.
So is it going to be trading? Like, are the shares going to be trading, or how does that work out?
No, if you're familiar with the DPO or an IPO, we're not trading. We are owners having a stake in if this business right now allowed us to share it out, then we would be owners and we would take dividends.
So I guess I'm a little bit confused. Where's the SEC coming to play with this? I'm thinking it's going to be.
The SEC is mandatory for a Regulation A Tier 2 raise, capital raise. It's mandatory. You cannot pool resources because that's securities. You cannot offer securities without the SEC approving the offering. Okay?
So it's going to be like a public company, or it's going to be a private.
It's privately held.
Privately held. So it's not going to be traded on the market.
The reality is this, in my own research, and is that to have something traded on NASDAQ is just kind of like bragging points. I failed to mention at the time that I met you, we submitted this idea to the #1 incubator. I think I mentioned it. The #1 incubator in the country, and that's Y Combinator. And if you do your own research, the fees to enter into Y Combinator are hundreds of thousands of dollars. This idea was allowed to go in free. And they ask for, because this is what they do in incubators, if you know, they ask for equity in it. But we denied it. We refused it to go ahead and go through the program. So I hope that validates or gives you an idea of the veracity of this particular investment.
So, are there any examples of what you guys are trying to do with ReUp that's currently on the market?
Unpack your question a little bit.
Are there any examples of is there
examples outside of us?
Yeah. Is this the first company that's ever?
This is the first to my knowledge. Mm-hmm.
So the products, the quality of the products, where we don't get products from, that's going to be all explained too, right? So you understand?
We would be the creators of it. I have a 100-acre farm myself but I'm just saying that's an example. There are lots of black farmers and non-black farmers who are in the business but cannot. See, let me show you this. The process of selling cannabis to a dispensary is like consignment. All right, it's consignment. When you sell that product to the dispensary, they don't cash you out and you walk away. That's why the underground market is so vast, because nobody wants to wait 90 days. Picture this: you've taken 6 months to grow this product, and you've paid people to trim it, to grow it, and everything, controlled atmosphere, temperature, all of this. It's expensive. You know how hot it is today? Now imagine what the controlled temperature and the light deprivation that's necessary for 6 months to grow this product. And then you take it to market. This is not corn and sweet potatoes. You take it to a dispensary, you got to wait 90 more days. You almost wait a year to get paid. That's why it hits the underground. So that I just want you to understand why it's so lucrative for us to have what you call a total vertical system. Yes.
So your goal is 1.34 million, and you're at 350 some thousand, I think.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So what's what's your end date? What's the goal, the date that you're targeting for? We need to have this 1.4, 1.5, whatever million.
We wanted by October to have had That's a great question. What we wanted to have is by October have raised this money, but it goes in two parts. If we have the money, but we're not blazing hot, and that's important, y'all, because when you do a capital raise, when you announce it's happening, the clock starts. The federal government starts the clock for 365 days, and if you haven't hit it by a certain mark, the offering is canceled. So we don't want to do that until we have, every time you turn on the internet or whatever, every time you turn on the TV, as you're watching YouTube, wherever you're watching, we want people to be talking about, hey, you know, there's a movement where black people are talking about collectively putting their money together, and that type of thing happens. We have a perfect opportunity because what's going viral right now is our exclusion from the industry. I don't know if you all have been following it, but if you click in anything, it is all over the internet that we are excluded. And they're having conversations at the highest level that, hey, this has got to stop. New York, the black politicians, they would not let the governor, they would not let the bill pass. They said, no, they killed it because they said it does not have any type of social equity in it. New Jersey, same thing. So all of these places, people are fighting back, but we need to add more momentum to it. So when we get the 1.3, that's why I'm not only talking to you all. Every conference that's lined up from now to 2020, I'm in the majority of them having this conversation. Does it make sense? To do a capital raise, people have to know you exist. Our market is the conversation. That's our marketing. That's our product. But the property and those things are out there, y'all. It's there. The opportunity to buy into the business exists if you have the money. The reason why less than 1% across the nation aren't in it because we can't get in it by ourselves. In Atlanta, in Georgia, you need to have a $2 million sitting in the bank as proof of capitalization just to apply for the license. So a lot of us are out as a result of that.
So help me understand. So once you're at the 1.34 billion, let's say October.
Let's say we have it now.
We have it now. There, licenses in Florida is, somewhere between 50 and 100 million. And so how, we have 1.4 million, so how then does this translate to, how do we get in the game at this point? We've done this, we talked about it, we've gone through the SEC, we have staff, blah, blah, blah. So
we got the 1.3 today, hypothetically, okay?
Right.
The only other thing we need is that nationwide, we need this conversation to be trending. All right? So where 1 million of us, 500,000 of us, whatever the number of us are, I'm doing this. And whatever levels, those levels need to add up because the cap by the federal government is 50 million in year one. This is why your question is, I like it, because if we do this and we do it in 3 months, you know what that means? We'll cut it off. We'll cut it off and make our purchases. But you know what gets to happen? We get to start the clock again on our next raise because we didn't take the whole year. You see? So we may not be able to purchase in Florida. But don't be dismayed because your state, but you own all over the place. You see, that's the beauty of it.
What's the going rate in these other states?
It varies.
You said 2 million in Georgia.
That's just the capitalization. That's what they want you to have as proof that you can fund the business. Yes. Yes. That doesn't include the performer or whatever else you need to have proof of that. In New York, you needed to have already owned the building when they first did the medical license. You needed to have already owned the building. You needed like $10 million set aside. Ridiculous numbers. That's why with the first medical wave, we weren't in it. And sister, to your question, everywhere we weren't, out west, they went immediately recreational. But when they started coming down south, they know we are thick down here. And you know what they did in Florida? Medical. Georgia, medical. Alabama, medical. And then they gave it here in Georgia, here in Florida, I think it's 3 companies that own all the license. That's how they did it. And so what will happen is by the time I watched it carefully. If y'all tell me if I'm wrong, y'all are here. They went low THC flower first. Then they went high THC concentrate and flower. And they're saying, but each time they did it, no, we're not going recreational. But if you watch closely, that's just simply so they could have the lion's share of the market. And then when they go recreational, they know what it's going to be. They're already out front. There won't be any room. Even if there's room, there won't be real estate to actually do it.
Hold on. Isn't DC recreational also? And then
Yes.
a lot of black people there, so what's going on in that area?
I think there's 2 owners in that area.
And they're like,
No, two black owners. Yeah.
so you went off their mom?
No. They're not. They just own a dispensary, and one of them owns a grow. They're not doing. What we're doing is so that we all can get in. Yes. Even those 2 operations may need funding. So we would come in and become majority shareholders in all of these particular places. In other words, it's the same model. If you're looking for a precedent, it's the same model as Warren Buffett. The whole Buffett empire is that it's a holding company that owns majority shares in several other companies. Yes, sir.
So it's basically a holding company, and then you're gonna find other companies that you feel hit your goal in terms of investments, and then invest in those for capital, or how does that work? As well as I want you to explain number 4, which is the registration A+ tier 2 offering for $75 million.
Yes. First question is yes. ReUp is a holding company, and everyone will actually have shares, equity, and ownership. And that company will make purchases of other companies, buying license, buying extraction labs. Testing is a big thing now that's happening. We would make these purchases, and we would become majority shareholders of every purchase that we made. All right? So all of these places, see, you gotta do math in this sense. We don't need to own one big thing. We just need a piece in a lot of places where we are. Because before you came in, I mentioned that we have an outsized influence. And in business, what that means is that we influence what is hot. What we say is hot is hot. When we say cookies, the cookies brand of marijuana was hot, it was hot. And when we are no longer smoking it, it's not being smoked. You understand? We have that ability. Whatever we endorse is. All right? And that's what happens. I mean, look at the shoes. I mean, look at the NBA. The NBA, do you know how many spin-off products happen as a result of the brothers dunking and shooting from half court? The caps, the sneakers, whatever it is that them brothers stand up and put their name on, it's a business. It's an industry. Again, I'm a sneakerhead, so I know about people standing in lines for a rare Jordan 3 or retros or something like that.
So what about the registration A+ offering?
Okay, I'll answer that, and then I forgot to answer your question. It's a concept. From 2012, Obama introduced and had passed the Jobs Act. And the Jobs Act is a Regulation A that allows for unaccredited individuals to invest in private companies. And this particular one is a Reg A+, Tier 2. Tier 1 means that you operate in one state and you raise funds relative to the SEC at the federal level and the state level. All right? But Tier 2 makes you have the ability to be exempt from following just what Florida says do at the SEC level. All of this you can look up also. So Tier 2 allows you to move everywhere under what's called blue sky laws, everything under the blue sky. All right? You can raise money from these places. All right? And so the limit on that is 50 million, but it's arguable that it may be 75 million. Yes, sir.
You have a mistake. Now, that 1.3 numbers you're showing, it doesn't seem like a lot of money when you consider buying land to grow the crops. Like you see, you have some lands in Alabama. Would you be buying lands with that money?
No, sir.
No?
That money right there is simply to make this conversation that we're having a household conversation so that everyone will put money in. All right? Not everyone. I'm glad he asked that because I really want us to make sure we get it'll kick in a second. That would have been right on time if it did it right when I did it. Next time. The 1.3. What happens with the 1.3? The sister asked the question. If we had that today, we wouldn't start, and I'm going to be a teacher, okay? I taught school for a year, so I'm going to make sure everybody's clear. If we had the 1.3, why would we not start today the capital raise? Somebody answer that. Sister, you remember the answer? Because we're not hot. You see, what that means, sir, is that when everywhere we go, we're filling up rooms. Hey, man, I want in on this. I understand this. Black, let's get it. That's what it'll take 1.3 for us to get hot. And the early adopters in anything, you get what you call preferred stocks or convertible notes. Let me explain what that means. When let's say you put in today, if you put in money in Uber in the early seed stages, you get what's called a convertible note. And what that means is that when we raise the money, you do a valuation. And the valuation of that company is not based upon what assets it has. It's based upon its market, addressable market. I'm giving you all a lot, but you can study it also, but I want you to understand because I understand the learning curve. So the valuation that you have today, you give me $10,000. That $10,000 is not worth just $10,000. At the point we make the raise, that $10,000 is a portion of the value of the company at that time. It converts to its value at that time. That's the benefit of being an early investor. It's like anything. When you're late to the party, my brother came late, so he missed some things. But individuals who come early, you get an advantage for being an early. I see it. Let me in. I'm in right now. You feel me?
When we hot, this room should be packed.
When we're hot, everywhere we go, this room is going to be packed. And you want that because remember I told you all about the network effect. The more people who are subscribers, number one, when we ramp up those subscribers, everywhere we're going. Like I said, I'm in every conference, not every conference. A lot of the conferences across this country, ReUp is there. We're having this conversation. This is early conversation. All right? So when we're hot, I'm saying when you look at those tools, when y'all go home tonight and look up geofencing, it's a scary concept about what it is. But like I said, everywhere you look, that Facebook is the master of it.
Google.
All of them. If you look at it, that ain't just, they're just not lucking up. That's why it's free. Because do you know what you're giving them? Maybe we need to just talk about that for a second. You ever looked at Facebook and then it identifies somebody for you?
Yeah.
That's face recognition software. It tells you where you are, and you do it for yourself when you're in the places. Hey, I'm in the Bahamas. And it tells you what your habits are. Those habits are sold. And the people who want you when you hit the Bahamas to know this, they push it to your phone. They're called impressions. We're going to use the same technology because we know we are consummate consumers. So we're going to make sure that everywhere you go, you are hearing about ReUp. And like our brother said, and when we're hot with that 1.3, my sister, that's when we're going to start.
So that's the attention grabber.
That's it. We're going to pay to play. Business is a science. It's not just luck, for tall guys to.
Will you have the infrastructure in place for, your staffing budget? And you talked about big data, basically all the analytics and all of that.
Well, those things are hard. Those are outsourced things. We're already doing that now with Google Analytics. Right now, those of you who sign up with Eventbrite, we have some information on you already. Those, when they go to the website, we have information on you already. But the concept of geofencing is a very, very expensive tool to monitor 10 cities every time they make a move as it relates to cannabis. Anytime you type cannabis, marijuana, weed, or whatever, it's going to pop it. And it's going to send it into what's called information funnels. And then it will track you and see who you converse with through your social media sites and I'm with that too. Tonight, if we had it, when you go home and say, girl, this was, and I'm in, and when you make certain keywords, it's going to catch that person. who they talk to, and so on. This is how they do it. That's why Facebook is free. That's why it's free. And it's important. That's why I don't ever have a problem in having these conversations, because I know the learning curve is steep for us. It's steep for us. If you knew what went into making us consumers, then you would really want to be an owner. If you knew what all was into that. Yes, sir.
And I agree with the learning curve. It's a lot to take care of. So if we make an initial investment today, we wouldn't expect to get that investment back to us until the registration A+ offering?
No. You'll get it back after we make the investment in a can of business. And just to show you, a guy asked me that before, and I like to, and maybe this is being defensive, so I'll give you my bias. I like to compare what's out there so that you don't think it's just what Melek is doing. If you got a 401k, there's a penalty to break it. There's a period of time that your any investment is locked for. It's just that's what happens in business. People use your money to turn it. We have said the bank does it. Your money ain't really at that bank.
So how long would our money be held up?
It's never held up. I don't like that terminology. It's investing. The concept of investing is you invest, and as you turn a profit, you share the profit. You share the revenue.
How's it decided on what to purchase, what to buy, a grow versus a CBD shop?
Great question. Great question. I've been in the business for 15 years, and I also have a team, MBA, CFO, individuals who are in the business as well currently. And so we will vet every company that we make the investment in. And I'll be very transparent with you. A lot of these companies that exist, they are former people who sold weed and have no business acumen at all. And so they need structuring. That's a disadvantage, or it's an advantage, which is why we would have the opportunity just to trust. Don't trust me, just do your research. I don't want you to do trust business, do business. Those individuals, those businesses have no structuring. An individual who's good at growing, they're good at growing. When it comes to going to market, it's another thing. But keep in mind, y'all, we're not selling widgets. We're not building something and selling it. You're simply converting the people who used to do it on the corner to being able to do it in the public. So your business model is different. We drink water already. You're not selling, Evian versus whatever, Melek water. You're not Smart Water. You're not doing that. You're simply taking something that was in the dark, and across the country, legalization is taking place. You're making it more accessible, so people who had to sneak around in the dark can walk right in and just show ID. So there'll be more of a demand than there is now. Right now, anybody, if you know street culture right now, we're experiencing a thing called a drought. All right? Brother man back there, yeah. I won't ask you how you know that. The reason why there's a drought is simply because the demand is so great on what's coming out of Cali. Think about it. Do you know how long it takes from seed to harvest? 6 months. All right? Not from seed, though. From seed to harvest.